Hello and welcome to the HIPAA Insider Show, where we discuss all things cloud technology, HIPAA compliance, and security. Welcome back. This is the second of a three-part series on essential plugins for WordPress. And last episode, the first part, we focused on security plugins for WordPress. This episode, we're going to be talking about performance, making your site faster, load quicker, and more accessible to search engines. So a fast responsive site isn't just a good user experience. It's a critical piece of patient trust and SEO. We dive into caching, image optimization, and server level tools to keep your healthcare website blazing fast and rock solid. Before we dive into it, Gil, welcome. We had a question from someone that watched the first part, and they were asking about the security tools that we talked about. We didn't clarify whether all those security tools should be used at the same time or whether it really is best of breeds depending on your use case. So how would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question, actually. The answer is might be obvious for some people that ever have some experience, but it's worth describing that when you're looking for a plugin to enhance your WordPress site. In last week's episode, as you mentioned, we talked specifically about security. There are many security tools that overlap. So one tool might do 80% of another tool. Yeah. And that a second tool might do 60% of another tool. So think about these tools. They're not independent. They're not segregated, separate. There are a lot of them overlap. Some of them are almost identical. So you don't want to add too many plugins to WordPress. The more plugins you add, the more bloat you get, the heavier the site is. And so you want to really pick carefully. So for example, if you're going to choose a security tool, a lot of people like to use WordFence. Mm-hmm. And there are other tools that are good. So you would want to choose WordFence. That would be your primary security tool. You wouldn't want to stack a second and third one because they would conflict and they'd be very heavy. So you want to be careful to keep them separate, I think, Adam.
Okay, great. Yeah, and we're going to talk about plugin bloat as well today. Okay, so let's dive into it. The first plugin we're going to review today is WP Rocket. Before we do, though, we're not sponsored by any of these plugin providers. We've just come across them and used them in the past. So I think that they might be useful for performance. Always do your own research, of course. So the WP Rocket, Gil, well-known brand out there, right?
Yeah, it's been around for quite some time. We've used it on many of our sites. And it can make a big impact. If a site hasn't been optimized well, in other words, it's performing poorly, then the WP Rocket can make a big difference, because what it's essentially doing is loading in memory, which is called a cache. It's loading in memory the pages that are accessed by the user. So if, for example, let's say the home page and 2 or 3 pages on the interior of the site are looked at by many people, those will be put in the cache. And so then when the next person comes to look at it, then they're going to load it very quickly, because it doesn't have to go fetch the page from the server. That means read the disk and then fetch it and show it to the user on their desktop. Instead, this page is already just in memory. And anytime you do anything with the disk of a server, it's very slow. Even the disks, even though they say, super fast disk, well, it's not as fast as memory. Memory is a lot faster. So putting as many pages as you can in the cache is good. And that means that you have to consider also how much memory the system has and so on. But I would say WP Rocket is a real plus. That somebody who's interested in performance really wants to look at. And Adam, I know you and I were discussing the other day that the search engine rankings are also impacted by performance. Google, if you have a poorly optimized site, and it's loading slowly, then it won't do well in Google. Google will lower it in the rankings because they want good user experience. They want someone to find a search engine result, click on it, have it load quickly, and have good information. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the value adds for WP Rocket, which makes it so popular, is that it's plug and play. There's no technical setup needed, and it works well with pretty much all themes and plugins. So it's a great one to have on the website. Okay, Imagify is the second plugin that we're reviewing today. So Imagify has the word image in their name, so obviously it's something to do with image optimization, right, Gil?
Yes, the images are, very, very important for a website. Images attract attention, especially the people that are more visual. So you could have a site that has a lot of images, and images are great when the quality is good. Fuzzy images don't look good, and it can be a distraction to your website. So you want good quality images. However, sometimes the graphics designers and the web designers, they get carried away. They have this really beautiful image and they don't webify it properly. In other words, they don't make it so it looks good and it loads quickly. It just looks good, and it's a hog. It's thick and it's heavy and it's going to be slow in loading. So what you really want to do is you want to figure out what's the lightest weight image you can have that has the least density to it in resolution, but yet look really attractive. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't compromise on quality.
Yeah, it doesn't compromise. And well, let's say it this way. It doesn't compromise it to where it's noticeable to the human eye.
Yeah, because more and more nowadays, people are accessing things on the phone. So if you think about the size of the resolution on the screen, having an image that's a gigabyte large, it's a waste of space, really.
Right. Exactly. And the resolution on a computer screen is really not nearly as high as, say, if you go to print an image. Printing images have to have super high resolution, but on the computer screen, the human eye doesn't require a super high resolution. So, but anyway, this tool Imagify will take these images and it will reduce them to a state to where they can load much faster, thus improving the performance of the site without noticeably impacting the quality of the image. And of course, you can tweak it. If you say, well, wait a minute, the image doesn't look good, well, then you can tweak it so that it does look good. And I think it works well, especially with a lot of our clients that are medical platforms that have images they need to show. It can work pretty well with those as well.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear your input. If you're listening or watching, leave us a comment about any other image optimization tools that you've used in the past and why you like them, because the one that pops up consistently is Imagify, but I'm sure there's other tools out there as well. So yeah, drop a comment, and while you're at it, give us a like and a subscribe. Okay, so the final performance-related plugin that we're going to talk about today, Gil, is a bit of a wild card, at least from the point of view of we've come into contact with it less, but it is growing and becoming more popular. And it's Perf Matters. Perf short for performance, of course. Performance Matters, and it is a plugin developed with simplicity in mind. It allows you to trim the fat on the website, and it allows you to do things like disable unnecessary WordPress features like emoji, scripts, embeds, etc. It allows you to do DNS prefetching, script manager, has a script manager for selective loading, and it also complements WP Rocket quite well, and it tackles front-end bloat, which we talked about earlier, Gil. Just from those couple of aspects there that I pointed out, does anything stand out to you that might be useful for the performance, especially when combining it with WP Rocket?
Well, we didn't talk about the database much so far. You mentioned it here. You said this ensures a fast and snappy database, and that's pretty important. WordPress comprises over 2/3 of all the websites in the world. And guess what? Most of the content for WordPress is in the database.
Yeah.
So I think that optimizing your database is another place that really is important, because a database, especially large ones, Adam, they get big and heavy. And the way you make a database faster is you have to what's called optimize the database. We talked about optimizing images by lowering the density. Well, you could do optimization of a database. And now in the case of a database, you're doing things like indexing certain columns, so that instead of searching through 10,000 records, maybe you only have to search through 200 records.
Yeah.
So optimizing that is really, really important, I think. So I would say that the images and database is probably some of the top two areas where you could really squeeze a lot of performance out of your site that way.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's a really good point as well. I mean, we talked about in the past static versus dynamic websites, and I think that could really play a big part if any of our listeners or viewers are building a website that has any functionality whatsoever that could be termed dynamic. Could you just give us a brief kind of run through what the dynamic means in terms of, if they're building like maybe a small patient portal or e-commerce or something like that?
For the dynamic part of a site, especially, and I like what it was saying here, when a site grows and you've got a lot of transactions. So the site, when it's shiny and new, hasn't had any transactions, but as the number of transactions goes or grows, you're going to have maybe people adding comments if you allow for such a thing. As it mentions here, they're adding a lot of comments to the site. That starts to fill up your database as well. And so over time, the sites become unwieldy, and they need to have work and energy applied to them. And I like to use the analogy of a teenager's bedroom, right? A teenager, they clean the room on a Saturday because the mom scolds them. You clean up your bedroom, and they do. But by Tuesday afternoon, that room
it's chaos again.
Pigsty. Mom walks in, she's tripping over crackers and a skateboard. Well, that's the first law of thermodynamics called entropy. Everything starts in order and decays. The same thing with websites. Just because it's shiny and new, day 0, day 1, over time, you get commenters, you get transactions, you get orders, you get images that are uploaded, they get bigger. Lots and lots of things happen to your website that make them decay over time. And some of these plugins, including this Perf Matters, is going to help keep things optimized for you.
Yeah, that's great. So there you have it. We've reviewed 3 plugins for performance: WP Rocket, Imagify, Perf Matters. Let us know if we've missed any out. Drop us a comment, and we'll take a look at those. I'm always interested in learning more about that. Gil, do you have any final tips for the viewers before we leave?
I did want to mention something. We talked about the WP Rocket, circling back to the first one, Adam, and we talked about how it helps cache these pages and have them ready for the users to snatch them without going to the disk. But one of the interesting features that WP Rocket has that we didn't mention is it can integrate with Cloudflare. Cloudflare is another caching tool, and the Cloudflare sits out there in the perimeter. And the reason that is helpful is because, let's say you have users that are looking at your website, and some are in California on the West Coast, and some are in New York or Florida on the East Coast. And let's say your web servers are located in Denver, so right in the middle. So what Cloudflare does is it allows you to serve copies of your pages to those that are in California to a server closer to California, and then those in Florida or New York are going to get the page from a server located closer to their geolocation. So WP Rocket integrates with Cloudflare, and I thought that's a really neat option that I thought it was worth mentioning here because it really enhances the performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great, Gil. Thanks for reviewing those and adding that extra point about Cloudflare. So that's it for this episode of the HIPAA Vault Show. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you have, give us a like and a subscribe. And until next time, thanks for stopping by.